All right, so in this video, I'm going to do a lot of tweaking and improvements to what we currently have. So we're not going to be adding a lot of new functionality, but we'll make things nicer. So for example, this validation that we've built, if I click add, see, I get this error message, but it would be nicer to be able to have some sort of highlighting for this quantity so we know that this field is the one that should have been filled in, or this field, the date, hasn't been filled in, so something like that. Another thing that I noticed last time, if I enter some quantity and some date, and if I click add, what happens after we do this and it adds a row, then we get this red highlighting, which I would like to get rid of as well, so it doesn't do that. So let's correct some issues here and basically just tweak things, make it look nicer. So I'm gonna go to Tools, Script Editor, and go to my user form. So the first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna get rid of this glow effect. And the way we should be able to do that is by basically modifying some CSS in Bootstrap. Now, if you're familiar with Bootstrap, a better idea here is to open SAS version, change all the styling, and deploy your own code. But assuming you don't know how to do all of those things, we're just gonna keep it simple. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna add a style container to this. And that style container goes inside of our head section right here. So anything that goes in the style container is gonna be CSS. We need to restyle some of the elements in Bootstrap, and it seems like this is some sort of box shadow that they add to add this glow effect. So if I go to their forms and just look, see they have this form groups that is wrapping around all their input elements. So if we take that class form group, and in CSS, to target the class, you do the period dot the name of the class. So we can take that and make sure that all the inputs inside of that form group don't have a box shadow. So let's try to do this and see what happens first. So we'll do something like box shadow is none. Let's just go check and see what happens. We may also have to do this when we focus on that element, I think. But for now, I'm just going to test this to see if this even works and then go from there. Good. See, the whole red thing that was happening is now gone. Now, the next step I want to take here, I want to improve our validation system. So when I click add, so this is good. It tells us that some fields haven't been filled, but we don't have some sort of visual indication which fields exactly. Now to do this, let's try to go to their docs in Bootstrap for forms and see what classes they have already defined. And if they don't have it, we'll have to make it ourselves, but I'm pretty sure they will have something like this already built in. There's validation section, maybe it's gonna be here. So it says that HTML form validation is applied via class invalid valid. So let's see if there is anything else available. As a fallback, you can use classes. Okay, so there is this is invalid and is valid class, and they do not require a parent. That's good because we're not using a parent form around this. So that should be fine. So I think if we do this is invalid class, add it to our form element, it should highlight it in some way. So just for testing, let me go and try to add this to one of these. So for example, for this input, if I go here, see there is this class form control. I'm just gonna hit space and add a secondary class is invalid. So right now, if that works, if I go back and reload this, this should be highlighted in red. So let's do this. Great, so that class works, but we don't want that to be invalid by default. We want to be able to dynamically add this class when it's necessary. But now that we know what a class is, I'm going to get rid of it in here. And we need to go to our JavaScript when we do our validation. So let's just find where we did the whole validation. So this is our validate. Do a comment with this class before I forget it. Right now, I'm using this every method from our array. The way this every method works, it's just gonna keep running through elements until it hits the first false. And if it finds that some element is not valid, it's not gonna keep looping through the rest. So they did this most likely to make it more efficient, which makes sense. But the problem with that is that if that validation goes through and I hit quantity received and this is not validated, it's not gonna get to the date to actually check if it's valid or not. Which means I'm gonna have to loop through it in a different way here. Now, I'm probably gonna keep this, even though that's not gonna be the most efficient way of doing this. What I'll do, I'll just copy like this much and paste it here. Only this time, instead of using every, I'm gonna use for each method from an array. Now, I think for node lists, this for each is actually available for some browser versions. So I should be able to just do fields to validate dot for each right away. But since it's probably not gonna be on all browsers, I'm still gonna use this array method over it. So I'm gonna do for each method. Now, this time it's not gonna stop halfway through. It will loop through every single one of them. And then we'll take that same list of elements. So what we could do, this is not gonna return anything. So we could do this. We could add an if statement and say if we check that validity of the element. So I'm gonna put that inside of that if statement because that's gonna give us true or false. So if we check that validity of the element and it ends up being true, that in that case, I want to do what's in this bracket, else I'm going to do what's in this other bracket. If this is valid, I want to make sure that if there is a class that says that it's invalid, we'll remove it. However, if it's not valid, which is the else statement, we want to make sure we add that class is invalid to it. So we're going to add it to each element. So since we get this element, EL, we should be able to do that by taking that element. And this element has the class list. And to this class list, we can add or remove. In the case it's valid, I want to remove is invalid class from that element. Otherwise, if we find out that it's not valid, instead of removing, we want to add that class. So that should pretty much take care of it. So let's save this and take a look. So now what should happen if I click add, hopefully, cool, we get the highlighting because these fields are not valid. Now, if I, for example, select a date, but still not have quantity added and click add, see, that removed the highlighting from this because now it did this remove of is invalid class for that one because now this is valid, but this one is still invalid, so that still has the class. And now if I go back here and add like 1 or something, hit add, now both of them are valid, this whole thing goes through, and now we're back to our form. Now let's see, I think they might have some options for us to add some custom messages to this without writing new JavaScript code. Okay, this looks interesting, so looks good. I don't care about looking good, I just want the errors. Please choose a username. So valid feedback is the green one. Invalid feedback. It seems like we don't really have to do much other than add this to our HTML. So let's try this and see what happens. I'm just gonna copy this div that gives us some sort of invalid feedback, go to my form and find the HTML, and I have to find those two input boxes. See, one of them is quantity received. So I'll just go right below that input, still inside of this div for the form group, and I'll paste this. And here simply just say, please enter a whole number, something like that. It doesn't matter. This will be the actual error message. And I'm going to just add the same thing to our second input, which is the date. Let's see what happens when we test this. It will be nice if this works just like this. If I click add, cool. So it adds, please enter a whole number, please choose a valid date. So now let's see if we can clear this. So if I do 2, hit add, awesome, that clears it out. So what if I just type some random text? Great, so our validation works. Since I converted this to a number field, it should only accept whole numbers. So if I do 1.2, that should also be not valid. So if you want to pass like decimal numbers, then you're gonna have to use text as the input type, not number. So we're gonna do 2, and if I click on it, that's gonna disappear. If I choose a date, click add, good, it adds the line, the whole thing works. I'm also gonna add some sort of text field here to just show you validation, and maybe we'll do like a text area. We'll add 2 more fields here. So I'll just go back to my form, find this form group. Be very careful when you're copy pasting these, because if you miss one of the divs or you do an extra div, this whole thing is gonna break down. So I'm gonna copy this, scroll down after this date received. I'm just gonna paste this. If you're having really hard time keeping track of this, you can add some HTML comments. And the way HTML comments work, you can do something like this. And whatever you type here will be some notes. So this way you can write some notes so you know this is the beginning, this is the end. Instead of doing quantity received, I'll just call this one. So I'm not sure what I'm gonna be asking, because this is pretty much what I wanted here. I don't know, like delivery note and comment. So those would be the new fields I'm going to be adding. So this will be delivery note, and that will be the same ID. So we have to match all of this. And this will not be number, this will be text field. Now, if you don't want this to be required, you could just not put required in here, and it should be just fine. And I'll do finally another one. And the last one I'm going to do is going to be not an input box. I'll do a text area to show you how you can have something that has multiple lines in it. So I want to go and check what Bootstrap markup looks like for this. That's an example of that. And this is the way it should work. I'm going to copy that. Go back to this and place this right below the last one. So this is just the text that our user is going to see. So you can just type whatever you want. I'll do notes so you can see it doesn't really have to match what you type here. But this ID has to match the 4. That should be accurate. Now, if you want this text area to be required, you also do required for our text area. So now I should have 2 new fields here. One is going to be this, and the other one is going to be this. Now, one thing I have to do, because this text area is not an input, like this input will be automatically validated because it's one of the inputs. But this text area, I don't think we did in our validation so that it grabs those elements. Let me just go and check. In our validate, see, we grab anything that's inside of that user form div with input as an element. Now, if we want to also do text areas, we're going to add this. So this way we can validate both inputs and text areas inside of that user form ID div. Good. So we're going to add it to our validation. Let me go back and make sure I didn't miss anything. That's all good. Now we have our ID. One is delivery note, the other one is called comments. So we need to grab this information and send it to our script, again, as usual. So I'm going to go back to the part where we add this information to our form, which is here. So we need something similar to all of these for both of those fields. So this will be delivery note and comments, and we're gonna add those to this object over here. So this is getting too long on one line. I'm just gonna move these things to different lines here. And now we need to add delivery note and comments to this. So something like this. So now that we add this to this, now we need to make sure we're sending all of these to our backend side to the form. So I'll go to functions and add delivery note and comments to that. So this is that add row. Now we need to add those to this as well. Again, I'm going to move all of these to a separate line. And somehow I remove this comma over here, which you have to be careful. So all of them have to be comma separated, but the last one should not have a comma. So now we're going to add delivery note and comments to this. So hopefully if we do this correctly, now if we go back and reload this, we should have two more fields. See, delivery note and this comment. Now let's just run this and see if our validation works, because we made all of them required. So we should get red. Good. Looks like I didn't do a message for this one. So that was our text area, which was this one. And of course, I didn't do this to do invalid feedback. So I'm going to add it to that form group. Okay, let's save. Don't forget to always save whatever changes you're doing here and always reload this to see if that actually worked. So I'm going to click add. See, please add your comments. Please enter your delivery note. Now I get my validation errors for all of those. Now let's try to enter some information here. So I'm going to run this. And here we go. We need a little more space, but now we have our line with all of this information nicely in our spreadsheet. Again, I'm not going to do required for some of these, but I do want to show you some other ways you can do validation other than just adding required. So for example, maybe for this delivery note, you may want to make sure that you require certain number of characters. So they can't just type like A and hit enter. So right now, required means if you type anything in the field, it will go through. So to add some custom validation to this, you could do things like this. So you can go to the element you're trying to validate. Let's say this delivery note. And after this required, you can add this min length equals to, let's say 5. Save this, go back and reload this. If I go and add a delivery note and do, let's say 3 characters, click add. Well, that didn't work very well. And that's because there is probably no dash between min length here. So let's save this and redo this. Click add. And now see, it says it's invalid, even though there's something in here. Add enough characters and click add. Now it's a valid field. Similar to this, there's also a max length, if I'm not mistaken. So if we do something like max length equals to, let's say 10. So we do minimum length and maximum length 5 to 10. So right now, if I click add, this is not valid. If I do like 3 characters, it's still not valid. If I do 5 characters, it's valid. But if I do, so it basically just max length automatically limits you to typing that many. That's nice. So it doesn't even let me type longer. That works for me. With this, you can also use regular expressions. So if you want to make sure they type some certain number of patterns or whatever, you can also use regular expression for this. So to give you an example of that, if I remove these and replace it with a pattern, and that pattern needs to be a regular expression string passed in here. Again, I'm not going to talk about regular expressions. I have videos covering regular expression functions in Google Sheets. Maybe watch those if you want to learn more about it. But let's say we want to make sure that whatever they enter in this box, maybe this is a phone number and you want to make sure that the phone number they enter is in this format. And I have to remove that maximum character limit here because that's annoying, or maybe I'll just add 2 more characters to it. It doesn't matter. So I'll just make sure that's the pattern I'm going for. So 3, 3 with dashes, and then 4. So to do something like this, I can require a pattern here. So I have to do the caret to say it starts with in regular expression. And then I'm going to do D for a digit. So we're going to say there are 3 numbers. So you could do D, D, D like this, 3. Or a little nicer way of doing this is by doing that. So you're saying there are 3 of whatever character I did here, which D means it's a number. After that, we want a dash. And then we want basically that D again. And again, there's going to be 3 of them. And then you could do another dash and do another D. Only this time, the last is going to be 4. So 3, 3, and 4 with dashes, and then $sign to make sure that should be the end. So this is starts with, this is ends with. So we may have to escape these dashes. I'm not sure about that. I don't remember. Let's save this and see. If we have to, we'll come back and escape them. So we'll save this, go back. So now if I reload this form, see there's the delivery note. Now if I type or don't type anything, that's not valid. Now if you remember, I did remove the minimum and maximum. So now I should be able to just type as long as I want to, but this is not going to go through because it's still not valid. So let's say 6, 5, this, something like that. If I click add, see that's matching the pattern I provided. So all good. But let's say you did this, you click add, that doesn't match the pattern. Or maybe you did like a text here. It still doesn't match the pattern. So now we have our regular expression pattern, and it needs to match the pattern to be a valid field. Basically, the pattern will let you do these regular expressions in quotes. You can search like how to do regular expressions for this or how to do regular expressions for that, and you should be able to use that because regular expression is a very complicated topic, and I'm not going to be able to explain it to you in this video. But that's pretty much custom validations for our fields. Now for me, I don't want to require neither one of these. So I'm not going to make this required and no pattern. And I'm also not going to make this one required, which is the comments field. And I'm going to remove all of those, save this. And now if I go back and reload this, if I click add, you'll see these are valid because these are not required. Now I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Now, one thing that I think I forgot to do is to clear this field. So I think if we do this and click add, see that does this and it adds the field, but now it doesn't clear delivery note and notes field because I didn't clear those in my script. So if I scroll down, so that's after submitting the form. See, now we take the fields and we clear them. Now we have 2 more. Now you can see how this is getting really confusing because we have to, every time we add a field, we have to come back and do this whole thing all over again. So what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to just create a function so I can pass the columns I want cleared and just clear all of those. So let me just go here and create a function. And in this function, I'll just pass an array of fields. And this is basically just going to be an array. So I'll just copy this and paste it over here. What we'll do, we'll just take this fields, which we'll assume is going to be an array, and I'll show you how we're going to use it here on top. But here I'm just going to do fields, and I'll just take that fields, which should be an array, and do for each loop on that. And this will accept a callback function. And in this, I'm going to grab all of this and paste it in here. And each field is going to be one of the things we need to clear. So what I'll do, I'll just pass that field name here. So I'll just call this one L, and then we'll call this one L value. And we'll take that element and clear the value. And now we should have this function that loops through all the elements we give it, which means we should be able now to take this clear fields function, go to here, and pass an array of fields we want to be cleared. So I'll say clear this one, and then I don't have to do this anymore. And if I have more fields, I just have to comma separate whatever fields I want cleared. So for me, it was those two fields, comments, and the other one was called, and we're using the IDs, right? Delivery note. So I'll copy that, go back to that array. These are case sensitive, by the way, so be careful. So we're gonna do this and clear those fields, save it, run this and see what happens. Click add. That clears all those fields. All good. Let me delete some of this. So that adds our new fields. Now, these are not required. As you can see, you can just play around with it. I was just showing you different types of fields you might need. And I'm also going to change this add text to something else. So I'll go back and find my button. Instead of add, we'll say add to database. So if I just zoom out of this to see how this looks, so that's pretty much what I got. So maybe the only thing I'm going to do here, just push this receive inventory down a little bit. So I'll go to my HTML. If I do padding bottom, I guess B would be that. If I do 3, let's see if that does anything. Nope, that's not it. Oh, you know what? That's the padding top, not bottom. What am I doing? There it is. So there's a little padding. So we have some space on top. That's nice. Maybe I'll also see what we can do with this headings, if anything is available. So I'll go here. So nothing in particular that I'm crazy about here. So maybe all I'll do is just make the size of this a little smaller, and maybe we'll add a line. So let's see how we can add a line really quickly. So maybe just use apparently this border bottom class. So I'm going to copy that, go back, find this H4, which I'm going to change to H5 to make it a little smaller. And I'm going to add a class to this. Border bottom. So that adds a little border here. I'm also going to do a little padding to push that line down. So this time it should be padding bottom. Let's try 2 and see what that looks like. That's enough. And maybe I'll also space this items below a little bit, which we should be able to do by adding a margin. I think I like that. That should be fine. I can live with this. And I think they also have this gray like area to the right you can add. Let's do something like that too. There it is. That's the badge apparently. So if I do this span in our H5 or whatever we have, just going to copy that, go back to this and do that right in here. Did they do a space in there or no? Yes. So a space before this. So we'll just say form. So now if we go back and reload this, yeah, good enough. So we have this, we have our form. And finally, to finish this video, let's also just add a color to this add to database button to change the color from what it is. Now there should be some available colors already. See, like these are available colors by default if you don't want to do your own classes. I think this dark works pretty well for me, so I'm just going to do this btn dark, copy that, and go back to my form, find the button, and instead of doing btn primary, which is that blue color, I'm just going to switch it with that dark. And with that, we should have a different color for the button. And that should do it for this video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.